Hi everybody, Eve Everett here, and today we're going to talk about what's sold on eBay, UGG, antique lace, restoration hardware, and how to be one of the last ones standing on eBay. But first, a few minor points of interest. First of all, this is Bun Bun. If you haven't seen her before, this is the rabbit you'll occasionally hear in the background as I'm recording these things. Bun Bun really helped me out the other day. A few days ago, I was sitting very early in the morning in my living room, jumped up real fast, decided I was going to go and do some work in my office, and I had a whole bunch of storage items in here at the time, and I walked over to them, and then all of a sudden, I felt like the world was closing in on me a little bit. I heard some like hushed noises, and I heard oomph, and then nothing. Well, I don't know how much time passed, but all of a sudden I hear thump, and then a pause, and then thump, thump, and then a pause, and then a thump. And I open my eyes, and I'm flat on my back in the office. And I'm wondering, how did I get here? What happened? And I'm looking up at the ceiling, and I hear Bun. And I got up carefully. I calmed Bun down because she seemed pretty upset. And apparently I passed out. Yeah. I have blood pressure issues, which often are under control, not always. And they've been tinkering with my really old school blood pressure medicine. A doctor I went to when I first started taking blood pressure medicine several years ago, he was really old school, and he put me on something that was pretty harsh. And I've seen a couple of doctors now who kind of told me like, hey, maybe you should be switched onto something a little less hardcore than this. And I kind of been putting it off, but the problem is that it leaches so much potassium out of my system that it's just getting dangerous. So, I'm supplementing so much potassium a day just to keep at a mildly abnormal level that it really has to happen. So they've been tinkering with my blood pressure medicine, and that must be the issue. And I've called it in, and we'll see what they want to do. But anyway, go Bun. It was very nice of Bun to do that. I have her eye level. I have her on 2 cabinets, so she's eye level with my chair. So as the day goes on, I'll toss her some snacks and things once in a while. And no, she's actually normal size. She's not huge. But I think maybe when I passed out and hit the floor, she couldn't see me. She knew I was in the office, but she couldn't see me, and maybe that got her upset. But she, I don't know if I would have came to right away or however long it was. We can't tell how long it was. My fiance and I tried to figure it out, but you just really couldn't tell, and I didn't look at the time before I went in here. So, but anyway, it couldn't have been terribly long time. So I'm very happy that Bun, I mean, let's face it, she's not Lassie, not pulling me out of any wells, but it was very nice of her to get stressed out enough about it, I guess, to make noise and try to get attention to help me. So I'm very proud of her. You go, Bun. Another thing I wanted to discuss is how to survive the race to the bottom and survive being a reseller over the long haul. One of the things besides diversification, which as you know, I'm really big on that. Diversifying where you sell, diversifying what you sell. A couple important things actually. First of all, there's initially a discussion about the rush to the bottom in the clothing category and how people are having to list more items to sell so that they can make up the difference in terms of what they're making. Look, I've been doing this for a very long time, over 13 years now, I think. And this is a cycle, and the cycle will pass, and the herd will thin, and then things will pick up. They won't be like the glory days of the 90s when eBay just started, but they won't be as bad as they are now. But no matter what, you always have to be out thinking and working smarter, not harder. One way you do this is you have to really relentlessly cut the fat, so to speak. Look at your overhead. Do you really need that storage facility? Do you really need that warehouse? Do you really need that, unfortunately, the extra employee? Do you really need all that stuff that is just kind of taking up space but not doing anything, and you really have no plans to list it ever? One of the things that I try to do every quarter is I have a auctioneer pick up what I call just stuff that either I know I'm never going to get to, or things that maybe I bought an auction lot and they're things that are probably worth some nominal sum, but I'm just not going to get around to it. And he takes them and he sells them, and I make a little bit that way. But it's really important to just keep things moving. Really relentlessly cut your overhead. The other reason you want to do that is when you run a lean outfit. Not lean to the point where you're cutting your nose off and spite your face, but lean enough so that when things suddenly turn sour and the water recedes out to sea, you're not sitting there with your pants down and no way to survive. I mean, let's face it, if you're paying a tremendous amount of overhead and things go bad, you're going to get stuck. Again, and the other issue is you always want to set aside money to weather times like these. And running a thin, lean outfit with as minimum of overhead as possible allows you to do that. That means constantly revisiting your overhead. Can you find cheaper shipping supplies that are still good quality? Can you maybe find another shipping carrier that will give you a better deal? I mean, all of that really adds up over time, and it's important that that gets revisited every so often. More critical, in my opinion, than anything else is really evaluating how much space you need and whether you should be going forward with storage facilities and whatnot. If you don't need them, then don't buy them. Why would you? I'm pretty conservative that way, and I think since I've been doing this for over a decade now, more than a decade actually, probably like 13, 15 years, I really try to keep on top of that, because when you're a reseller, you are only as good as your diversification of product and your overhead, really. So, failing that, unless you have a rich uncle to bail you out, you're pretty much out there on your own, and you have to be aware of that. The other issue that you have to think about are always the tax implications of what you are doing. It's critically important that as your outfit grows, that you pay attention to that. Otherwise, I promise you, it will bite you in the butt in a huge way. I mean, I've seen it. I've tried everything humanly possible to avoid running into that issue, but I'm sure that you've heard other sellers discuss that the tax issue has been a huge burden because they didn't really deal with it until they absolutely had no choice, and it resulted in anything from a minor to a major train wreck, especially if you're going to start employing people. If you're going to do that, I highly recommend that you 1099 them, because when you start getting into the area of paying employer tax, the IRS is incredibly strict about that. And yeah, you can farm that out, but again, you're adding to your overhead, and it's just a real pain. And that's just my preference. I know there's like a whole quote-unquote morality issue there, but I think it's the landscape of America, really, that most people are doing, the whole 1099 thing, and that's just life. And life's unfair. So anyway, like I said, so that's also incredibly important. And not last but not least is understanding your profit margin and buying to resell with that in mind. There's a couple of sub-issues that go under that, one of them being velocity. Whether you're selling on eBay or Amazon, velocity of sales is always an issue. It's a balancing act. One of the reasons that is, I mean, as you know, certain things will sell faster at certain times of years than others. That's not to mean that you carefully, run an algorithm and make sure that, you're selling particular things at particular times of year, because things will always sell. But you can really set yourself up for disaster if, let's say, you buy a ton of product that is long tail and it's going to take a while to sell, and then you hit the wall where sales slow down. You're carrying a couple thousand items that are every month costing you fees, and then you have your overhead, and I mean, as you can kind of imagine, it can lead to a catastrophe. So, that velocity of when something's going to move is important. Now, you won't always know exactly when something's going to sell, obviously, but use your common sense. I mean, obviously, a book that is going to be used in class and is being currently used in a college or a high school class, something like that's going to sell a lot faster than some obscure print of a mansion that's signed that someone may or may not come across and buy for a year. Big difference. So velocity of selling something is very important. The second thing is, let's get back to basic. Know your margin. When I look at something to resell, I'm looking at a margin no less than at least 5 to 6 times or more what I paid for it. You have to give yourself plenty of cushion, unless you're really sure that you're going to sell that right away and that the labor you're going to put into selling it justifies that slim profit margin. And you also have to factor in returns. If you have an extremely slim profit margin and you have returns, you pretty much blow yourself up. I know people that talk about all day, I'll spend $1 to make a couple bucks. Well, I won't, because I'm getting older, and the last thing that I want to do is spend my time making a few bucks when, if I have even one return, it's really going to cut into that. That is just not the way that you can save for retirement. So in my opinion, what you need to do is, if you're buying a widget for $5 and you know that you'll be able to sell that widget in the next couple to several months for $25, well, then that makes sense. I'm not talking like something that is labor intensive and involves a tremendous amount of labor, like puzzles or things that have multiple parts that you have to count. I'm not talking about things like that, because those things, you have to calculate what your time is worth into that to figure out your margin. I'm just talking about straightforward things. So you always have to keep that margin in mind and not be stubborn about it, because I promise you that being stubborn or in denial about what you're making from eBay or Amazon will kill you far more quickly than any cycle. So you just have to really think about what you're doing, and, as the new saying goes, stop LARPing. You have to live in reality as it is, and not the way that you think it should be, or not the way that you see other people doing it. You have to live in your reality, which means you really should be buying what you're comfortable with, selling, and, learning these other categories and getting into them once you're stable and on your feet, so to speak. And if you are asking yourself, I really feel uncomfortable doing this, I'm not really sure what's going on, then you're probably overreaching for yourself. That's not to say that you shouldn't learn new categories, because that's how you diversify and make more money, but don't do it to the point where, you're actually shooting yourself in the foot and losing money. So you have to find what that balance is for you. And I hope that what I'm telling you makes sense and helps you. And when I say stop LARPing, I mean, a lot of people have shows. You see how well they think they're doing. You see how well they tell you that they're doing. And I'm going to say something controversial, and I know I'm going to get hate. I'm definitely not pointing at any particular people. And I think that you can probably distinguish some of these people from people who are living truth to power. But let's face it, not everybody's honest. And some of these videos that you're probably watching, they are not telling you the whole truth. They're not telling you the whole story. And if you really think about it, you can probably see for yourself who those people might be. I'm not going to point to anybody in particular. You guys know who I have love for and probably who I don't. But if you feel uncomfortable with what somebody is telling you, you probably shouldn't believe in that. So be careful. But the bottom line is, if you're going to be successful, you have to do what you love. You have to sell what you know and expand on that and diversify. You have to keep an eye on what your profit margin is going to be. If your margin is too slim, even if you sell it quickly, there's going to come a time where you're just going to slit your own throat. So you have to be really careful, and that's when diversification of platforms and what you sell come into play. And finally, like I said, you have to pay attention to your overhead. You have to pay attention to the tax implications, and you can't LARP. L-A-R-P, yes, I'm serious. I'm learning, right? You can't live in a reality that you want to exist. You have to live in it as it really is. So it's really important that you relentlessly review all these aspects of your business. Otherwise, you're going to be one of the people culled from the herd, so to speak, and you're just not going to be selling anymore, and you're not going to be watching these videos because you're going to have to find a job. And I know I sound like a complete dick, but I really want to see all of you succeed. And that's important to me. Not that I'm the most successful person in the world, but I've been doing this for a very long time now, and I think that I know enough about what I'm doing to survive the current cycle of the slowdown, although I'm not slow. I mean, I'm doing pretty well. But also to make sure that maybe the rest of you will be hanging out with me for some time to come. Anyway, I know, right? Let's move on. All right, and the first item we're going to talk about today is Henry. Henry the dog. If you go look up Henry on eBay in various sizes, he doesn't do too bad. Usually he looks like a bad copy of Snoopy, and as you can see there, he has basically these two black plain button eyes and a little patch that says Henry on it. And this particular Henry was 25 inches tall, and someone had imposed a brown pom-pom over his original nose as a nose and added that, I believe they also added the belly button. And he was dirty and a mess, and I still sold him for $59.99 and shipped that to California. It took me a little under 3 months to sell that. I originally posted that for $99, so the person that bought that took that on a best offer. But if you look at the Henrys, especially the bigger ones, you can do really well. And my Henry was a bit of a hot mess. I did clean him up a little bit. I didn't really spend too much time on him though, and I got almost $60 for him before fees and everything. So not bad for something that's pretty shabby looking that a lot of people would pass over. And oh, by the way, I got this at the Weigh and Go. So if you see Plush in general, I think that it comes from a company that maybe you haven't really heard of, or just looks kind of strange and out there, so to speak, the way, especially like Henry does. You might want to just grab them and look them up, because you never know. You might find that they are worth a lot more than what you'd think, and I think Henry here definitely falls in that category. Speaking of Plush, this is a Thai bear by Sally Winey. He's a jointed bear, and I sold him for $34.99, and that took me about under 3 weeks to sell. Shipped that to Alabama. If you're selling Thai items, Thai Beanie Baby and Thai items in general, you won't believe how many Beanie Babies with the tags that I just have just sitting here in a bag. I just never seem to get to them. It's terrible. But aside from that, not that I want to be a Thai beanie seller. I'm not sure I want to get too involved in that. But every once in a while, you'll have an artist collaborate with a maker. And it's always useful to look at those and see if you might be able to capitalize on that, especially, I mean, this is another Weigh and Go special. So in this particular case, I sold this one for $34.99, and like I said, I think it took me under 3 weeks to sell that. Yeah, it did. So not bad. Here we have a Naval Weapons Station hat. It's an XO hat, as you can see there on the back of it. And I sold this for $34. That took me about 20 days to sell. Shipped that to New Jersey. I like to grab novelty items from Harrods when I see them out there. Like that, for example, the Harrods Bear. Anything that's on stationery, things like that. tend to do fairly well. I went over a set of Harrods Stationery that I sold several episodes ago. In any event, this is a Harrods Knightsbridge Scotty Dog tote. Real simple, itty bitty thing. Probably less than 9 inches tall. And it was just basically like, like raincoat material. And I got a ton of questions on it, and I ended up selling that for $24 in 15 days. Here we have a glass bake vintage egg coddler with its lid, and I really like retro kitchen items. They just have a really cool vibe to them. It's one of these items that I find from time to time, and I pick them up because they're fun to look at and sell. I sold this for $24.50. Took me a little under 6 months to move that. Here we have a vintage Fenton Burmese hobnail vase, and this ran about 11 inches tall, 6.5 inches across the ruffled at the top. Most of you probably have heard of Burmese. It's a pattern that was introduced by Fenton in 1971. This particular hobnail Burmese was discontinued the year after that in 72. And it's in pretty good condition, and I had high hopes for this piece. I priced it probably much higher than I should have, and I ended up selling it for $55 plus shipping, and that took me almost 2 months to sell. Here we have a set of 3 Polish folk art wood plates to be used as wall hangings, and they had all their hangers attached, very light. I ended up, I love Polish art, but just like everything else that comes through here, if I don't sell it, it's just going to end up in a big hoarder pile with an imminent intervention from my family. So I did list these, did sell them for $34, and it took me a little under 2 months and 2 weeks to sell those, ship them to California. And here we have a Boyds Bears Noah's Ark. Had its animal set included as well, 6 pairs of animals along with Noah and his wife. And I had originally put this up for $79.99. Ultimately, I chickened out and sold these for a very sad, paltry $40. People probably getting more for them, but just seemed like the right time to let them go. So it took me almost 3 months to sell these, and I shipped them to Kentucky. Oh, and quick bun break. This is a much better picture of Bun Bun, my lion head rabbit. Here is a really cute Ben Berger faux leopard hat. I shipped this to South Africa, and this is, I'm posting this because this item is officially the longest item I ever held on to and sold. I had this item up, I don't know how it evaded my relentless axe of trying to get things down if they hang out too long, but this item was up for a record-breaking 3 years. I put this up on December 1st, 2013. So actually, no, it wasn't 2 years. I'm sorry. It was more like 2 years and 8 months or so. Anyhow, I shipped this to South Africa, and I sold it for $27.99. Here is a vintage 80s gold mesh, metal mesh handbag with a braided strap. I sold this for, I took a best offer for $25, and that took me like 5.5 months to sell. Really don't do a lot of Whiting and Davis or metal and mesh handbags and coin purses the way that I used to, because I don't know, I'm just feeling that they're getting harder and slower to move, and they're just not very exciting to me to begin with. So anyway, but I did move this one, so $25, shipped this to South Carolina. Here's a Japanese Obi Sash, and this ran about 114 inches long, 7 inches wide. This really glorious floral design. I should have kept it, but like I said, you get this whole slippery slope thing. It's never a good thing. Ended up selling this for $44.99, which is below what I had hoped, but you got to go with the flow. Anyway, I did enjoy having it for the time that I had it for, since it was just so gorgeous. Here we have a black silk, elaborately floral embroidered Japanese robe. It does have some Chinese characteristics in the design, but it's probably a Japanese item designed for export just after World War II. And I sold this for $102. If I covered these in my last video, I humbly apologize. It's just, I am not properly caffeinated, and you guys know how that can be. Anyway, this is an UGG black leather handbag, and I sold this for, by the way, this is on my Simply Vintage account. You all can see right there. This is my example account that I use, so you guys can check it out. Anyway, $57.99, which, by the way, I'm probably going to get my first negative on that account. I sold something, and for the life of me, cannot find it. I don't know what the heck is going on, why I did that to myself. Very rarely have that problem, but hopefully she will be nice about it, or I find it. Anyway, but I digress. This person did get this item, and I sold it for $57.99. Here we have two finials that I picked up at a thrift shop that opened relatively recently in a shopping center. I don't know how successful they're going to be, simply because their location is very hard to find even in the shopping center, but I guess we'll see. Anyway, I picked up these two in the box finials made by Restoration Hardware. I paid $6 for both of them, and I sold them for $54.99. Alright, whoops, sorry guys, I didn't even bother to enlarge or crop that or anything. This is a YSL Yves Saint Laurent brown leather belt with these gold tone square rectangle doohickey things on it. I guess you can say it's a studded belt. And I got this. This is another weigh and go item, so I really didn't pay very much for it. Happy to have it. It was missing one of those gold tone rectangles near the buckle. I did mention that in the ad, and if you'll take a look, these YSL belts are not doing nearly as well as they used to. So I took a best offer for $40 for that one, and was happy to get it. Alright, and here we have the lace trim that I told you that I can't find, that I sold. I sold this 4.4 yards of Edwardian trim for $45 to a very kind lady who so far has given me a little more time to find it, but I have a bad feeling about it. Hopefully I will find it soon. I really don't have this problem very often, so it really bugs me when I do this. Hopefully I will find it, and I'll throw in some extras for the poor lady. I feel bad for her. It's totally my fault. I blew it. And like I said, I'll take some time to look for it, but I got a bad feeling about it. Anyway, don't want to end on a negative note, but unfortunately sometimes you just screw it up. And there you have it. All right, everybody. I hope you had a very restful holiday, and I hope you're excited for the new year. I hope you have your resolutions made and ready to keep, and I hope we have a great year of making money and finding things and learning. All right, everyone. Have a great month and good hunting.